Have you ever had one of those days when you think everything is normal, but then, out of nowhere, your life flips upside down because of one tiny misunderstanding? That's exactly what happened to me when the Homeowners Association, better known as the HOA, decided my car was a problem. They didn't just complain. They called the police on it. But here's the twist. The car didn't even belong to me. It belonged to someone with power. Someone no one in my neighborhood ever imagined would be involved in a story like this. That car actually belonged to the governor. And that mistake, that reckless call, started a chain of events that no one could stop. It all began on a calm Saturday morning. The sun was bright. The streets were quiet. And I thought it was going to be just another lazy weekend. My cousin had borrowed my driveway because his car was in the shop, and he happened to get a loaner car. Nothing unusual, right? Except this car looked different. It was sleek, black, shiny, and way fancier than the usual vehicles parked on our street. What none of us realized at the time was that this car wasn't just some loaner. It was an official state vehicle temporarily assigned to governor, while his regular car was in for maintenance. Yes, you heard that right. By some stroke of fate, the governor's car ended up parked in my driveway. Now, in a normal neighborhood, nobody would care. But this wasn't a normal neighborhood. This was an HOA-controlled community, where the people running the HOA believed they had more power than city officials. These were the same people who once fined a neighbor for having the wrong shade of blue on their mailbox. The same people who counted how long your garbage bin sat outside. The same people who thought every car, every flower bed, every blade of grass had to meet their approval. So imagine their faces when they saw a mysterious black government-plated car sitting in my driveway. From the very first moment, I noticed the stares. One neighbor walked by twice, pretending to water his lawn, but looking straight at the car each time. Another neighbor took a photo on her phone, probably to upload it to the HOA complaint group chat. Within an hour, I received a message from the HOA president herself. It read, "This vehicle is not authorized to be parked in this neighborhood. Please remove it immediately or action will be taken." At first, I laughed. I thought, here we go again, the HOA trying to control everything. I ignored the message, thinking it would blow over. But ignoring them was the worst mistake I could have made. Later that afternoon, I heard sirens. At first faint, then closer, until they stopped right in front of my house. 2 police cars pulled up, lights flashing, doors slamming, radios buzzing. My heart sank. I ran outside, and there they were, 2 officers standing next to the black car, looking at it like it was evidence in a crime scene. Behind them, a small crowd of curious neighbors started gathering, whispering, recording on their phones. I couldn't believe it. The HOA had actually called the police on a parked car. My car, or at least what they thought was mine. One of the officers asked loudly, "Whose vehicle is this?" All eyes turned toward me. My face burned. I raised my hand and said, "It's, my cousin's. He's borrowing my driveway." The officer's expression didn't change. He said, "Ma'am, do you realize this vehicle is government property?" That was the first time I felt my stomach drop. Government property? What did that even mean? I blinked at the officer. "What do you mean government property?" He pointed to the plates. I hadn't even noticed. The numbers were unique, and there was a small seal on the corner of the plate. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just any car. This was something important. And suddenly, I realized the HOA had made a huge mistake. The officer continued, "This vehicle belongs to the governor's office. Can you explain why it's here?" My mouth went dry. The crowd grew bigger. The HOA president, wearing her oversized sun hat and smug smile, stepped forward and said, "Officer, this vehicle has been parked here without authorization. We have strict rules in this community, and we do not allow random vehicles to sit in driveway for days." She spoke like she was a mayor herself, not realizing she had just insulted the highest elected official in the state. One of the officers looked at her, then back at me, then back at the car. He radioed something, his voice low, his words clipped. Minutes later, another car arrived. But this wasn't just any car. This was a black SUV, tinted windows, with security officers stepping out. My jaw dropped. This wasn't just a misunderstanding anymore. This was about to explode into something much bigger. The governor's security team confirmed it. This was the governor's temporary vehicle. The governor wasn't inside it, of course, but the car had been parked there as part of the arrangement with my cousin. Turns out, my cousin worked with a service that managed state vehicles, and the governor's office had arranged to use his company's lot. But the lot was under maintenance, so my cousin had to park it at my place for a short while. Everything was completely legal, nothing shady. But to the HOA, it was the crime of the century. And that's when the tables turned. The security officer stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. Who reported this vehicle? Every finger pointed at the HOA president. She didn't flinch. In fact, she puffed her chest and said proudly, "I did. This is my neighborhood, and I will not allow strange cars sitting here without approval. I don't care if it belongs to the governor or the president himself. Rules are rules." The crowd gasped. I almost covered my face with my hands. Did she really just say that? To government security? To the police? In front of half the neighborhood? This woman had no idea the storm she had just unleashed. The officer didn't argue. He just nodded and made a call. I couldn't hear the details, but his face was serious. Minutes later, more SUVs arrived. And then, unbelievably, the governor himself stepped out. Yes, the actual governor in my neighborhood, on my street, standing a few feet from my driveway. The whole crowd went silent. Phones shot up in the air. People whispered, "Is that really him?" The HOA president's face went pale, but she tried to recover. She marched up to him and said, "Sir, with all due respect, your car was parked here without authorization. We have community rules." The governor looked at her like she had just spoken another language. Then he turned to me and asked quietly, "Is this your house?" I nodded, trembling. He smiled and said, "Don't worry, you've done nothing wrong." I apologized for the trouble caused by my car being here. The entire street gasped again. The governor had just apologized to me, but that wasn't the end. No, this was only the beginning of a storm that would leave the HOA president wishing she had never made that call. Have you ever watched someone's confidence vanish in seconds? That's exactly what I saw on my street that day. The HOA president, who always spoke with power and acted like she owned the world, stood there trembling as the governor looked straight at her. The silence was heavy. Every neighbor, every police officer, every member of the governor's security team, all eyes were locked on her. For once, she wasn't the one in control. The governor spoke calmly, but his words carried weight. "Ma'am," he said, "you called the police on a government vehicle. Do you understand the seriousness of that action?" His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the air sharper than any shout. The HOA president stuttered, I was only enforcing community rules. We don't allow unauthorized vehicles. We have strict parking standards." The governor tilted his head, almost like he was studying her. Then he asked, "And do your rules stand above state law? Above government protocol?" The president opened her mouth, but no words came out. The neighbors shifted uncomfortably. For years, she had bullied everyone with fines and threats. But now she looked small, like a child caught doing something foolish. Then the governor turned back to me. "You have been more than patient," he said. "I'm sorry you were placed in this situation." My heart pounded. Never in my life had someone so important spoken to me directly, let alone apologized. Cameras flashed. Phones recorded. I could already imagine the headlines. Governor confronts HOA over parking dispute. But here's the thing about HOAs. They don't like to lose. The president tried one last time to reclaim her power. "With all due respect, Governor, our community has rules that everyone must follow. If we allow exceptions, chaos will take over." Her voice shook, but she forced out the words. That's when the governor smiled. Not kindly, but like someone who had just caught a liar. "Chaos," he repeated. "Do you think maintaining order means harassing citizens for things that are not violations of any law? Do you think calling the police on government property is order? You've wasted resources, embarrassed your community, and tried to intimidate a homeowner who did nothing wrong." His words sliced through her pride. The crowd murmured. Even her closest allies avoided her gaze. The governor didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He just said, "This matter won't end here. We will be reviewing this HOA's practices." And just like that, her empire began to crumble. The next few days were like living in the middle of a news storm. Local reporters showed up, filming in front of my house. Headlines spread across social media. Governor's car targeted by HOA. Homeowner harassed over state vehicle. HOA president embarrassed in confrontation. Videos of the moment went viral. People everywhere were talking about it. Some laughed at the HOA's arrogance. Others were outraged that an ordinary citizen could be treated that way. For me, it was overwhelming. My phone buzzed nonstop with messages from friends, co-workers, even strangers. Some wanted to know what it felt like. Others wanted me to expose the HOA further. But what shocked me most was how many people shared their own HOA horror stories. People from across the country sent messages saying, "This happened to me too," or "Our HOA is just as bad." Suddenly, my story wasn't just mine anymore. It was a voice for thousands who had been pushed around by neighborhood associations that thought they were above the law. Meanwhile, the HOA president tried to save herself. She sent out a community-wide email claiming she had only been concerned for neighborhood safety and had acted in good faith. But nobody bought it. The video clips of her proudly saying she didn't care if it belonged to the governor or the president were everywhere. Her arrogance had been exposed. The fallout came quickly. A week later, state investigators arrived. They weren't there to look at my car. They were there to look at the HOA's books, their complaints, their records. Years of shady fines, selective rule enforcement, and harassment came to light. Neighbors who had once stayed silent suddenly found the courage to speak. People brought receipts of ridiculous fines, letters filled with threats, even cases where the HOA had overstepped its legal authority. It all came spilling out. The president fought hard. She held emergency meetings, tried to rally her board members, even threatened to sue anyone who spoke against her. But the tide had turned. When the state got involved, her power was no match. Within months, the HOA board was dissolved. A new system was put in place, one where homeowners actually had a voice. As for me, the governor himself sent a letter thanking me for handling the situation with patience. He said he admired how I stayed calm despite the pressure. That letter now sits framed in my living room. Not because I want to brag, but because it reminds me of something important, that no matter how small you feel, standing your ground can make a difference. The neighborhood changed after that. People were freer, happier. No more fear of being fined for leaving Christmas lights up too long. No more secret photos being taken of cars and driveways. The community became what was always supposed to be, a place to live, not a place to be ruled. But the lesson wasn't just about HOAs. It was about power, about control, about what happens when people forget that rules are supposed to serve the community, not crush it. The HOA president had power, but she used it to intimidate. The governor had power, but he used it to protect. And me? I was just an ordinary person caught in the middle, yet somehow my story became the spark for change. So if you ever felt small, if you ever felt like rules were stacked against you, remember this. Sometimes, all it takes is one moment, one story, to flip the script. Sometimes, even the governor has to remind people that authority doesn't mean tyranny. And maybe, just maybe, this story will inspire you too. Don't let yourself be bullied by people who think they're above you. Don't let fear silence you. Stand firm, because you never know who might have your back. You never know how far your story might reach. Because if a simple parking dispute can bring a governor to a quiet suburban street, then anything is possible. So tell me, what would you have done if the HOA called the police on your car?